Welcome to Constant Variables, a podcast where we take a non-technical look at building and growing digital products. I'm Michael Roth. Let's get nerdy.
This episode is sponsored by the Jed Mahonis Group, your partner for building digital tools right the first time. If you're building a health-related mobile app or a web tool, be it for employees, patients, or consumers, visit jmg.mn/medtech to see the success our clients in the health sector have had by partnering with us to build their technology. That's jmg.mn/medtech.
Hey, Kristy. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about Vertige today. For the audience, Vertige is an application that has been in the iOS store since about May, and Kristy had launched it as a Vertigo tracking application that can, allow users to note various factors that might be contributing to vertigo. She's looking to get an Android version launched as well here just around the corner. But Kristy, I would love to hear from you, maybe what led into your creation of Vertige and then kind of what made you turn the corner to go full time into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually Vertige and it means vertigo in French.
Thank you.
Yeah, I took French in high school and college and I always loved French. So I went with the fancy route.
No, totally. And that's always fun when you can think of a unique name that's not already taken, but still has a definition towards your app. That's awesome.
Right, exactly. So I was diagnosed with a vestibular disorder called Meniere's disease in 2017. So leading up to that though, I was having different vertigo episodes, but not really knowing what they were at the time. It would happen very sporadically. And I'd be like, what is going on? The world was kind of spinning around me. My vision wasn't great. I'd get sick. But, the one time I was on my computer, the other time I was on an airplane and just had it really briefly. And I couldn't pinpoint anything. So then I started noticing my right ear was feeling full all the time. So I just contributed it to allergies. So I went to an allergist, they told me I was allergic to earth and they said, just take some allergy medicine, you'll be fine. And it didn't get any better. And then I started having these vertigo episodes more frequently. So at my worst, I was having about 8 to 10 episodes a month where I couldn't get off the couch. And like I said, the world is spinning, you're sick, you don't know what way is up. And it is such a disorienting, scary, anxiety-inducing feeling, especially when you don't know when it's going to happen or why it's even happening.
Have it happening multiple times a week even would be very, very unnerving.
Oh my gosh. I mean, my anxiety was through the roof. I had it happen once when I was driving, and luckily I was able to pull over and it kind of just went away and I was able to get home. But one of the first times I remember parking at the end of my street. I live in Philadelphia, park at the end of the block. I called my husband and I was like, you need to come outside. Something is not right. And when he came outside, he was like, were you drinking? You're walking sideways. You can't even walk straight. And I was like, I have no idea what's happening here. So after going to multiple doctors, I finally had balance testing done at the University of Pennsylvania. And it's not fun. You go through hearing tests and different things, and then they strap you into a chair and put goggles on you, and they spin the chair around to monitor your eyes. It is, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, even as a person who's not had any episodes of vertigo in my life, I would hate that with all my heart.
Right. So, but that finally led me to a diagnosis because of what they monitored, and I have some hearing loss and all my other symptoms put together. I was diagnosed with Meniere's disease. So Meniere's, and there's a lot of different vestibular disorders out there, and Meniere's disease and vestibular migraine kind of go hand in hand and are sometimes interchangeable in the diagnosis. But there's so many different triggers for the vertigo episodes. So as an example, with Meniere's, you have to watch your sodium intake, because that fullness that I was experiencing in my ear is the fluid in your ear increases and decreases. And then, so you have to watch your sodium. And then with vestibular migraine, you know, there's certain foods that could trigger an attack. So like I can't eat chickpeas or avocados anymore because that's like an automatic vertigo episode waiting to happen for me. So
that's crazy.
It's nuts. Like, yeah, you wouldn't expect all the different things like deli meats, nitrates, even some fruits, because of the tyramine. When fruits get more ripe, the tyramine increases in them, and that could be a trigger. So it's kind of crazy. And stress, hormones, screen time, there's many different things that can cause a vertigo episode.
It really sounds like such a complex allergy, because to me, it reminded me of sorry to interrupt, but my sister had like a gluten intolerance and she loved craft beers, but every now and then she'd have a beer and would have almost like anaphylactic shock type reaction where she would be breaking out, would get puffy. And she finally found out that there's like a certain level of, I think it was gluten in certain beers that was affecting her like that. And I can totally see how with vertigo, if you're getting 8 or 12 different and completely ambiguous factors at play, that would be impossible to identify on your own.
It is. It's very tricky. And, you know, it takes time. And then finally, I started just habit tracking in my planner. I was like, okay, I have to try, because I started thinking in my head, like, okay, I think I'm starting to see some different trends here, but I really need to track it on a daily basis to see, like, get an overview of my month and see when I am having these episodes and what's contributing to it. So, you know, I'm not great at art. So my habit, because some people get really fancy with the habit tracking and the colors and all that stuff. And I was just pretty much, you know, putting stuff in my planner. And then I started to notice like, okay, this contributes, that could be a factor. So it finally got to the point where I was like, okay, now let's do this on my phone instead of putting everything on paper. And I went to look for a vertigo tracking app, and there's a bunch of migraine tracking apps, but there weren't any for vertigo. And I was just kind of like, oh, how can this be? There's such a big population of people. Like one of the statistics is 35% of Americans aged 40 and older, which equates to like 69 million people, will experience some form of vestibular dysfunction in their life.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, well, that's a lot of people. And how can this not be addressed?
And with such, as you were mentioning, such a populated market in the other mental health space as far as migraines go, I'm shocked it hadn't pooled over yet, but that's a great spot to identify that need.
Exactly. Yeah, because people hear migraine and you just think of like the normal migraine, which affects millions of people. But this one, you know, the vestibular migraine, you don't really have any aura or pain as much as just vertigo. So
sure.
It is interesting that these haven't really like migrated over, like you said. So I'm part of a bunch of Facebook groups, and that has been invaluable because I see what everybody's going through, and I'm lucky enough that my vertigo is pretty much maintained at this point. Like I'm pretty good with, I get off balance on occasion and have certain things, but no like full blown vertigo episodes for a while now. And
awesome.
Yes, thank goodness, knock on wood.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
But you know, I went onto one of these Facebook groups, and this was now the end of last year. So I went on and just made a post. Would anybody be interested in a mobile vertigo tracking app? Would you find that helpful? Give me some feedback. And I had a really good response. There was one woman who said she would still prefer to write everything down by hand. And I was like, absolutely, like I get it. But everybody else who had responded had said they would be interested. So I was like, okay, I know there's a market. I know this can help people. So how do I get started? And it's interesting because my background is not in tech whatsoever. Like I have experience in retail, account management, marketing, PR. So I've worked with some tech companies in a previous PR position, but really getting like down and dirty and doing this type of, creation was out of my wheelhouse.
Sure. And when you were making that Facebook post, was that still kind of the ideation phase well before you had committed to working on the application, like full time even?
Absolutely. Yep.
Got it.
It was
That's
still,
awesome.
This was just like let me throw it up there because I have this idea and let's see what kind of response I get. And then it was just little by little. I was like, okay, like this is something that needs to be done.
And how did you go about finally deciding when to transition between just researching and going all into working on it?
I think once I realized there really wasn't anything out there like this, and I'm on these Facebook groups, seeing what people are going through. And like I said, I'm lucky that mine has become manageable, but when you see people at their lowest pain point, when they're just being diagnosed or maybe not even fully diagnosed yet, and they're so scared and feel so helpless, it kind of just made it easy for me to say, like, I'm going to do this. Like we need to do this, like as a community, like this, we need to have this out there.
Yeah. So really, once you were able to verify like the need in the user base, you were willing to like leave that full-time job and commit to that entrepreneurial bug.
I still was working through the first half of this year when things were being developed. So I actually went on to Upwork and posted on Upwork that, I had this job and like the job of the app that I wanted to create. And I got inundated. I mean, tons of responses.
Only imagine. Yeah.
It's overwhelming. I had, I had done a post once also on LinkedIn and same, like you get such a great response from people.
LinkedIn was going to be my comparison to that. Yeah, it gets so flooded because it's a bunch of tech specialists looking in a tech space and then they get a tech request. And it's the right environment to reach out for sure. You get quantity.
You definitely get quantity. Absolutely. So then it was about finding the quality, I guess, or even somebody who I could work well with because like I didn't have the experience in creating an app. So I really wanted to find somebody that I meshed with well and that we could work together and, really form a partnership during this job. So I talked to a bunch of people and there was one person, Eric, who ended up working with me on the first version. And it was just he was so knowledgeable. He was so easy to talk to and work with and, help me along the way that once we talked in person, like I felt like it was just a no-brainer. Like I knew right away.
Awesome. So yeah, I was going to I'm glad you covered that so quickly. I was going to segue after noting on how much quantity you get from places like LinkedIn and Upwork, how you started to narrow down to someone that you could trust the input of as a non-technical founder, because so often I hear that as a non-technical person, you could tell me this feature costs $15,000 or $75,000 and I would have no idea which one's accurate.
Right.
And how did you start to feel that you could trust like the individual that you were working with or some of the development teams? Did you have multiple interviews with a ton of them, or was it just meeting in person and finding someone that felt like was a trustworthy individual?
Yeah, I mean, I had a handful of calls, but then even from Eric's first email, he was just so open to be like, even if you just want to talk something through it first, like I'm here to do that. And I really appreciated that because there were so many people who just that just didn't present themselves in that same way. And it just put me at ease. And then once we talked, he was just so open. And one of the things I would say is that, texting, whatever, it's great, but if you really need to get in front of the person, and whether it's Zoom, in person, if possible. But, once we talked on the phone and really got an understanding of what I wanted and what he was capable of, and, he was getting excited about the project. So yeah, it just happened naturally after that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And something we champion is that it's never too early to involve a developer in your project, because you can just do those quick conversations and quick touch points to make sure you're involving them at the right time. Mm-hmm. And so often we hear people that have gone to overseas teams and just gotten yes, 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 yes. And then they sign up and wait a few months and they don't get what they're expecting. And that front end conversation is everything, because you have to make sure they exactly understand all the features and all your plans and the expected outcomes. Otherwise, there's just so many variables. It's impossible to have a quick exchange and convey that idea.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree on that. And something Eric had suggested for me to do was, print out, or just even on a piece of paper, draw like an iPhone, just the outline, and really just start putting my ideas down as what each screen would look like. And that helped me so much, because, when you're getting started, I have so many different ideas running through my head, and I'm looking stuff up. And it was so helpful to really put it's like a flow chart just in place and see what everything was going to look like. And then, we could hop on a call and go through, and he could give me advice and feedback on this would be better here, or this would work. We could do this instead. So that was something I found really, really helpful.
I think whenever a founder is willing to take ownership and involve themselves in the partnership like that, it is invaluable to the development process, and it can save everyone time and money. Very often we might get a founder coming up to us in the ideation phase, and they ask for kind of blanket features. Like they'd like a main menu, and they'd like a login screen and like a user setting screen. And then you have to go and ask, okay, what do you want in it? And you have to ask that question maybe 4 or 5 times to get all of those details. Mm-hmm. And if you can just get the owner to commit to that idea of what we call wireframing, and that's kind of drawing out those very basic screens and what the user could click on, that lets the developers see, and like a picture's worth 1,000 words, exactly what you're thinking. And then they know how to go create that on the back end, what to prioritize, and like what variables you're looking for. So your openness to that, I think, is such a great step for you, and good for everyone else to hear that it was easy for you to get into and just drawing.
Yeah. I mean, and I took inspiration from a lot of different things. And, I think that's what you have to do. You have to see what you would want and what other people would need and prefer. And then, take inspiration and then just put it down. And it can always be changed, but it's so helpful to see that come to life on paper.
100%. And I definitely don't mean to say easy in the sense of minimizing how much work it was, because I'm sure it was weeks, if not months, of reiterating it and going over it. So not minimizing any of that. I'm sure the excitement was a big driving factor there too.
Oh, absolutely.
So currently Vertige is on iOS only. Yes. What factors went into you considering iOS only rather than Android for the first platform? And what made you decide only to do one at a time, even though you're kind of aiming for both in the end?
So to be completely honest, I mean, we kind of just were like, all right, this is a bit of an experiment too, to see how it's going to go. And I have an iPhone and my husband has an Android. And I was like, well, I'm going to need to see it on in person. So I'm going to choose iPhone. So I can't say there was any real, crazy thinking behind it. It was just for the sake of money, cost, and everything too, is why we decided to just do one first. And my thought process is like, okay, let's do it for iPhone. I have an iPhone. That way I can monitor and see what it looks like and make any necessary changes as things go about. And then we can make this one perfect, start doing the discovery calls with potential users and get the feedback and make this perfect and then just replicate it for Android.
Awesome. That's another great business practice to go about, because getting it out to like yourself as the main user or even a small user test group and then iterating on it is so helpful and so essential to making sure that the product you're creating will actually serve a wider user base. Mm-hmm. Or in your case, if it really just had to fix your issues and track well what you had going on, that be it as well.
Yeah, it's been I'm really happy. I think we did it the right way for what our ideas were, just because now we are kind of in that phase where I have some people testing it. I'm getting some feedback. I know I want to incorporate some additional features in hopefully sometime in the near future. And then really just get this as best as it can be, like I said, and then just replicate.
Yeah, absolutely. And in those early conversations, did you and the developer ever talk over specialties on their end or which platform they were more comfortable with? Or had you guys already decided you wanted iOS going into it?
So he's actually an iOS specialist and does not do Android, which was another factor that I didn't really think about as much in the beginning. I just knew I wanted iOS to start and wasn't expanding into Android just yet. So it kind of just worked out. And that was one of the other factors where I saw he can do it. And so it all just kind of worked out in the end.
Yeah, and I ask that because I think it's a key point for founders or app owners to keep in mind as they're exploring different resources. So often people just think to look for a developer, but if you think about looking for a builder and you're looking to replace the siding on your house, you might need a specialist depending on the type of siding you want. Same way you might need a specialist developer depending on the type of application you want. So it's all good considerations to have on the front end.
Yes, definitely.
Were there any things that surprised you throughout the development process, or was it pretty smooth without a hitch?
You know what? I have to say it was very smooth. And it's funny because my husband and I were just talking about this recently, and he said he was really surprised at how fast everything happened. And from his point of view, he thought, we started talking to Eric, the app developer, in January, February, and we were able to launch the first version by May. And yeah, my husband was shocked at how quickly it went. And from my point of view, I just thought everything was smooth. We took the time we needed. We figured out, we went back and forth, Eric and I, about different things, because the way the app is formatted right now is there's a daily summary that people go in and add, certain foods that can be triggers. So they add that, they add a sliding scale of how many hours of screen time did you have? How many hours of sleep? What is your stress level? Certain things like that. And then that data, so you're also putting in your Vertigo episode duration and severity. So my mindset was that there are days that you might be off balance. You might have some ringing in your ears, different things like that. So that could be a 1 to 3 depending. And then full-blown Vertigo episode would be a 10. So that information populates into weekly and biweekly reports on the app. And the Vertigo episode and duration presents as a bar graph. So you're seeing okay, today's Friday, I had a 3-hour long Vertigo episode that was a 10 on the scale. So that's going to show as the time frame, this bar graph for the 3 hours, and then the shading changes for the severity. So if it's a lighter gray, it wasn't as crazy of an episode, but if it's a darker, then it was a full blown, maybe 9, 10.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense.
So then we took 5 to 6 other factors of the triggers, and now we have them populate into these reports as a line graph. And you can choose at the bottom if you want to see just one or multiples. And then you can see like, okay, Friday, I had this 3-hour long, really bad episode. But guess what? I didn't sleep a lot. I drank a lot of caffeine. I was super stressed. Here are the factors that all contributed to that. So my hope is that people can start to identify these trends and then also share this info with their doctors, whether it's their physical therapist, their ENT, their neurologist, so that there's data to back up. Because when you go to the doctor, and I remember the first time I was like, I'm having vertigo. You have no clue what's contributing to it. So in this case, you actually have data to present to the doctor saying like, here's a snapshot of what's going on in my life. And now hopefully together you can come up with a care plan to go forward.
That's such a smart approach. I love that. And I also feel like that makes the patient a little bit more of a champion of their own health. And I really think that that's key whenever you get involved in more confusing or complex medical problems. As hard as it is, you really do have to give insight from what you've been experiencing for them to have the best shot at diagnosing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember the second time I saw my doctor, I was so discouraged. I was so upset. But I wasn't taking the medication that I was supposed to take because I didn't want to have to take medicine. So, and I was doing the XYZ that was all contributing to it. So it's about taking ownership and then seeing, and who would have thought chickpeas would give me vertigo? Like that was just, and I was eating chickpeas, right? Like I was eating chickpeas almost every day, literally at lunch at that time frame. And it's like, I didn't even put it together until later down the line. So it really is like taking ownership and things that you're doing on a daily basis that you might not even think contribute to it could possibly be that one key factor.
Yeah, that's crazy. Because is there a certain like chemical present in chickpeas that's triggering it across other foods, or is it just specifically chickpeas among other things for some reason?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the chemical could be, like what that would be in chickpeas, but it's like chickpeas are on the list as a potential trigger. Avocado is, chocolate, red wine, tomatoes, or there's just, the list is like so long that when you first read it, you're like, what am I going to eat every day? Like, this is insane. I was drinking red wine like it was going out of style at that point. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do that anymore.
Oh boy, that's a lot of adjustment all at once.
It can be. Yes, it definitely can be.
So I know as a founder, things can sometimes get complex, especially when you're on a tech-focused product, between like development and marketing and growing the capital or financial platform of the business as well. How have you managed balancing like growing the tech side and the business side as an individual?
Well, you do have to have your hands in everything. And I am lucky that I still have, a good relationship with the developer. So if anything on the technical side comes in and we need a quick update or something, I have a question even, he is a great resource that I still go to just to kind of check in. And he can easily tell me like, okay, nope, it's all right. Or here I can go in and just do this quick fix and we'll be fine. We did actually realize something during one of the people who were testing out the app, brought something to our attention, and I was able just to reach out to him because I couldn't figure out why it was happening. And, so that just creating that relationship and like still being able to talk to him has been huge from the technical side. And growing the business, I do have, that business development, marketing, and PR background. So that is huge for me to be able to rely on. And, even just sending out a couple pitches to local Philadelphia writers. I was able to get a write-up in Technically Philly once I, became part of this accelerator that I think we'll touch on. But yeah, I mean, you got to do it. You're the person with the vision, and you just have to keep the vision in your sights, and things pop up and you just got to get them done. That's what it comes down to.
And I love how you found a resource for where you weren't an expert and then leaned into where you were to mesh that really well so that you could help make that harder lift for you a lot easier. And as an individual, I'm sure that's necessary.
Definitely. I've always wanted to have my own business. And my sister and I actually had like a super small, like side business. So, I do have a little bit of experience from that, which it wasn't anything tech related. But yeah, like that's just always been my dream, is to have my own business and to create. So I do get asked a lot, like, what's something that surprised you, or what's something that you found difficult? And I just feel like so excited and so lucky and grateful that I'm able to do this right now. And I've had jobs where things were crazy and stressful, and I'm like, this comes nowhere close to any of the stuff I did for other people, like in the years past. And it's my own thing. So I'm happy, like, to get my hands dirty, and whatever comes up, like, we're going to figure it out.
That's awesome. As you were just mentioning, you were recently accepted into Generator's Prosper Health Tech Accelerator. Mm-hmm. What made you apply to that, and what kind of like results or first steps come from Prosper Health Tech's Accelerator program?
Yes. So this has been so exciting. I was familiar with Generator. I guess over the past year or so, they've kind of come onto my radar. And I think, we had already launched the app. I was kind of just thinking, like, I need to know what to focus on. And there are so many different things, and just like a little mentorship and things like that would be so helpful. So I went onto Generator's website and saw that they had this health tech accelerator, and the applications were like about to close. So I emailed the director, and she was like, you know what, just put your application through. We'll talk next week. And, I submitted the application that day. I heard from her the following week. We set up an interview. We went over a bunch of different info, and it was fast and furious, because then within another week, I found out I was accepted. And the whole,
wow.
Yeah. Oh, it was so quick. It was like fast and
so like
furious.
Within 2 weeks of hearing about them, you were accepted.
Yeah. Like, I didn't know about this health tech version. And like, cause I had seen some of the other things that they had done. And then when I went on, it was just like, oh, where did this come from all of a sudden? So yeah, I mean, it literally was within 2 to 3 weeks.
That's awesome.
It was so cool. So this one specifically is based out of Birmingham, Alabama, because of Prosper is the company that is supporting Generator in this accelerator, because Birmingham is, it's a great town. I went down, I guess the week after I found out I was accepted, I went down for the kickoff meetings, and it is such like a
awesome.
cool, it was great. And it's such a cool place. And, they're just trying to bring awareness and bring businesses into their city. So, the accelerator itself is weekly lunch and learns. So we get like one lunch and learn a week. We have mentor calls, up to 5 people a week that we're talking with, and they range in experience and background. So you're really just like submersed in talking about everything, talking through, coming up with ideas, like being able to talk to so many different people that you wouldn't have access to. Like Generator's database of mentors is huge. So it's been great. And then I was just down in Alabama again, in Birmingham this week, a couple days ago, and got to meet more people, and also meet another cohort in a different accelerator. And it's funny, like just being around everybody, it's so inspiring and everybody is working so hard. And it's just, it just it made me come home and want to work like, 5 times as hard as I was, because
Yeah.
there's something about just being in person too, which we don't get to do as much anymore.
Yeah, that really does seem like a super motivating environment. About how often are you going down to Alabama or planning to go down to Alabama throughout the next few months?
So this accelerator was 7 weeks long. So this will be ending in the next like 2 to 3 weeks. And I will not have to go back to Birmingham, again, after this past week that I went down.
Okay, got it. And do you still have a lot of like different Zoom meetings with the group, or is it really just they got you connected with some resources and network groups and now you're running?
We still have, so we're all on Slack together as like my cohort, and a lot of Generator, the other startup founders that have been through Generators accelerators over the years. But my cohort has our own separate like channel. And then I will still have weekly lunch and learns, the mentor calls, and a once a week one-on-one call with the director of our program. And that's very helpful. Like our director is amazing. And it's just, our time to really like talk through what's been coming up and where I want to go next and how she can help me and what mentors like she can connect me with to help take me to that next step. So that will continue through the end of the 7 weeks.
Okay, that's awesome. And do you right now personally have any goals you're trying to get out of the program before you're finished with it? Or is it already just so helpful that you're soaking it all in?
I mean, it is so helpful and I've been soaking everything in, but also I really, want to get the iOS version of the app completed in that next step is my hope. So we've really been focusing on like discovery calls and the surveys with the users and how to get more user feedback so I can like really finish this list of things that I want to add to the app. So to really have like a general overview of where it's going next, and to also just keep in touch and make these relationships and sustain the relationships with the mentors and, my fellow startup founders. Because it's so much about relationships in everything you do. I mean, it's helpful. It's so helpful to have that sounding board. And with the founders that are going through it, just seeing them this past week and hearing what they've been experiencing and comparing it to my experiences since we last saw each other. Like, it's just nothing beats that. I feel like that is just so helpful. So yeah, everything's been wonderful. I'm so excited.
That's such a healthy environment to get into when you can bounce ideas off of other people and get to people that are maybe 2 steps ahead of you, but not so far ahead that they're hard to talk to. And having everyone helping each other out in that kind of communal environment is just amazing. I heard you mention that you were still trying to kind of put the final touches on the iOS app. Is there significant additional features you're hoping to add, or are you hoping to refine things as far as like the calculations of different factors going into an episode?
There are some additional triggers that I want to add, maybe some like update some design just from the feedback that I've received from the people testing the app as of right now, just to make it a little more user-friendly on certain screens that may have come across as confusing. And somebody made a great example, gave a great feedback where barometric pressure is such a big factor on how you can feel and if you get vertigo. So maybe even adding certain things like a location tracker so it can populate to wherever you are and let you know if that barometric pressure is rising, decreasing. So certain little things like that here and there, because I think we have a good base as of right now.
That's awesome. That's a really cool idea too. So when you were sifting through all of those development resources at the start, and you finally found one you could trust, I'm sure there was a significant quantity of ones that you did not end up going with. Were there any significant red flags or pieces of advice you could share with another founder when they're researching a development partner?
I think, like I kind of mentioned before, when you're looking for that partner, somebody who's going to help take your vision, to the next level, you really have to have that one-on-one call and face-to-face, a phone call, not just all over text or email. Like, it's so important to get that vibe and make sure you're going to mesh and you're going to work together well. And you have to go with your gut too. I mean, there's always something where it looks so great, but you might that feeling, I don't know, something's just a little off, and you always have to go with your gut and just, it's your vision, and you're going to get so much information and advice and opinions from other people, which is amazing. But then you have to sift through all that and find what works for you.
Yeah.
That is a big one, because it's so easy to, get taken off down these rabbit holes and things. And it is, you have to figure out like if it works for you and if it's part of your vision.
Yeah. I love that you had a good experience in finding a developer, and that there weren't any horror stories from the journey for you, because we've definitely met people that have had really tough, like early stage development experiences. So that's awesome to hear. So, Kristy, what final thoughts do you have for the group here? If anyone's listening, either creating an application or maybe looking to learn more about Vertige, what do you want to leave them with, and where can they learn more about your app?
Yes. So I would say if you have an idea that you believe in and, it's going to help you or others, do it. Hands down, even if it seems so out of your wheelhouse or you have no clue where to start, it's just put that first foot down step by step, and you're going to figure it out, because it is so rewarding. And, I always think like there's nothing I can't do, and I'm going to figure it out. And, if you have that vision, just go for it and try it out. And for Vertige, I mean, my hope is that we bring balance back to vertigo sufferers through data, through yoga and mindfulness, which is another aspect that I want to incorporate down the line. And really just, help people and help to empower people again, because they can feel so helpless. And you can find our website at www.vertige.app. We're on social a lot at Vertige_app, or Facebook is just Vertige App. And you can email me at Kristy, Kristy, at vertige.app.
Awesome. And one more time, that's Vertige. I know I'm going to be hopping over to the App Store or the website and trying to find a look at it here soon to share it with some people in my life.
Great. Thank you so much.
Awesome, Kristy. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks to Kristy for joining the podcast today. You can learn more about Vertige by visiting vertige.app. If you're looking to learn more about your host, Michael Roth, you can connect with him on LinkedIn. Show notes for this episode are at constantvariables.co. You can get in touch with any of us here at the show by sending an email to hello@constantvariables.co. Today's episode was produced by Jenny Karkowski and edited by the brave Jordan Doust. This episode was brought to you by the Jed Mahonis Group. Check us out at jmg.mn and sign up for our monthly newsletter.